Ever since I started screen printing last year, I get a lot of questions on the process. And when I first started, I found that there were not a lot of instructional videos. So today I'm going to show you how I screen print. I already have a screen in use, so we're going to use the Speedball Diazo Emulsion Cleaner. We're going to put a couple of drops on each side of the screen, rub it in with a gloved hand, and let it set for up to 10 minutes. While we wait for our screen cleaning to do its magic, I'm going to create a new batch of photo emulsion. For this, we start with a bottle of Diazo Sensitizer. It's just powder that you add water to. The instructions say to fill this little bottle halfway with water and shake it up. Once it's shaken enough so that no powder remains, you're going to add this to your emulsion and stir it up. Once it's thoroughly stirred, put the lid back on and store in a cool, dark place for 1 to 2 hours. Okay, our cleaning has done its job. You can see that the blue is a light blue now and the design is gone. So I'm going to take a Brillo pad and very lightly rub each side of the screen, being very careful not to push too hard because the screen is quite thin. After rinsing it with cold water, I shake out the remaining water and set it upright to dry. While we wait for the screen to dry, we're going to go to Canva to create our design. I love these design templates, and some of these I will be using for a later project, but for today I already have my design created. I got both of these from a free template from Canva. When you're creating a design for screen printing, you do want to make sure that you have a lot of dark, bold lines in your design. When you transfer from a screen onto another surface, dark lines are going to show up significantly better than fine or faint lines. When you're ready to print, you are going to want to print on transparency film. This one is one of my favorite brands to use. As you can see, this is Quivic Dry, that's important, and also Brent's Brilliant Color. So this one, as you can tell, is perfect. There is a trick to know which side to print on the transparency. If you blow on it, the side that fogs up is non-printable. So you want to print on the side that does not fog up when you blow on it. Before I print directly onto my transparency, I always print it on a piece of paper first. I'm so glad I did it for this because you can tell that my ink was running really low. Anytime you have lines like this in your design, those exact lines are going to show up just like that on your t-shirt or whatever you're printing on. So if you don't want those lines on your design, do not have them on your transparency. For this particular project, I did not have new ink at the time, so I did have to improvise, and I ended up just putting my transparency over my print, and I colored it in with a jumbo Sharpie marker. And yes, I did just get done telling you to avoid lines on your transparency, but I wanted to go for a kind of horror film, like scribble scrabble look. So I was intentional to leave a lot of Sharpie marks on this one, and I love the way it turned out for my print. Now that our screen is dry, we are ready to coat it with the photo emulsion. Remember, this is UV sensitive, it reacts to UV light, so I'm going to give it a quick stir, make sure it's all one color, and then we'll lay it out on the screen and put it in a dark cabinet to dry. Once I've spooned my emulsion onto the screen, I'm going to use my scrapey tool and run it across the front of the screen a few times to make sure it's coated evenly, and then I'll flip my screen over and run the scraper on the back as well to make sure that both sides have a nice even coating of emulsion. We'll then put it in the drying cabinet for about 3 or 4 hours. We can't do anything else until this screen is completely dry.
2,000 years later.
It's been several hours. Our screen is finally dry. It's nighttime now, which is perfect for this next step. I have my freshly printed transparency and I'm ready to put it onto my screen. Next is the UV curing process. I have my UV stand up on a couple of boxes because based on the size of my screen, I really need to make sure that there's about a 16 to 18 inch distance between the light and the surface where we're going to put our screen. We are ready to place our transparency right side up directly onto the top of our screen. I've placed my transparency on top of the screen, upright. The way we want the image to appear is how we're going to put it on the screen. I also put a piece of glass that I got from a picture frame right on top of the transparency to ensure that the image is pressed down against the screen. You may have noticed I have a black t-shirt underneath my screen. That's because you do need a dark black surface if possible, so I just use an old t-shirt for that. My screen has cured under the UV light for about 12 minutes, and now it is time to rinse it off with cold water. The trick here is to try to focus your stream of water on the image, not on the surrounding area. You really want this image to be crisp and absolutely free of the emulsion. I am really happy with how nice and crisp this turned out. I think it's going to be a really great screen print. Now we have to set it back in the cabinet and let it dry overnight.
The next day.
I have my t-shirt ready. I tried it on and marked where I want my design to start. I have it on a good old-fashioned biology book. My husband did build me a table with a hinge, but for easier jobs like this, I just prefer to use a textbook for my hard surface. Next, I'm going to lay my screen on top and line it up just the way I want it. I am sure that professional screen printers are cringing at the sight of this. Most people say to hold the screen up while you're putting the paint on and only put it on the surface when you're ready to pull the paint. I, for me, have found that it's a lot easier to go ahead and lay everything down, put the paint on, and then scrape. So you just roll your paint down the screen with your scrapey tool. You go up to down and then down to up a few times to make sure that the paint goes through the design. I am so happy with how this turned out. I'm really impressed that even the fine lines picked up, and I think that's because I gave it a lot of extra attention with a toothpick to make sure that I had a very crisp design. Now we are going to let this dry for a little bit before we pick it up and clean off our screen. I do plan to use this a few more times, so instead of taking everything off, I am going to store this in my cabinet for just a day or two until I'm ready to do a few more. I let it dry for about 2 hours, and now I'm going to cover it with parchment paper and iron it. I'm going to do this for about 2 minutes. Here it is. I am so thrilled with how this turned out. And here is the back, my Scribble Scrabble. I absolutely love the way this turned out, and it only took 3 days. As you can see, screen printing takes a lot of time, but it's so much fun. Enjoy!